From the party that brought you Alexander Hamilton, the man who infamously assumed our nation's debt, we present the illustrious John Adams. The federal party offers a strong, centralized national government geared towards reaping wealth for our young, beautiful nation through a commercialized economy and an enlightened ruling class. Following the Revolutionary War, Americans were left plagued by debt and despair. Only the great Alexander Hamilton was able to begin recovering us from this crippling state with his propositions to assume and fund said debt, with the help of the beloved elites, creating our own national bank and taxing Americans. Yet now that we are freed of our monetary obligations, we Americans must pursue the greater image of strength and wealth which we so righteously deserve. The Federalist Party strives to build a government focused around urban growth as America prospers and begins to look towards international trade and commerce to stabilize our nation's wealth. Yet, of course, the plan for our great nation's prosperity is only possible with the cooperation of the wealthy elite. The upper class's irrevocable help to resolve America's post-war debt, their continual contribution to the promise of the nation's lucrative economy, and their inherent capability of governing in a virtuous manner amply justifies their superiority in our federal government. The Federalists recognize that the wealthy elite can, like no other people in America, govern the nation in a way which reflects the greater good. With ideology backed by none other than the revered George Washington, the Federalists have been taking care of America's government for an exemplary 2 terms. Alexander Hamilton's funding the national debt programs have kept wealthy Americans invested in the government by providing new and better bonds and assuming the debt. Hamilton's 2 taxes, one regarding whiskey distillers and the other a tariff issued in relation to the protection of our beloved country, have helped to stabilize our government after a devastating war. Now is not the time to stop Federalists' forward momentum. In Adams' first term as president, he protected the new nation from the querulous French by publishing the XYZ Affair. This document publicized French discontents and led to the cease of the quasi-war with France by creating a navy, refusing the ridiculous French demands, and by cutting off trade to France, thus establishing the young United States as a strong country by standing up to a much older nation. Without President John Adams' careful approach and reasoning, greater conflict could have arose, possibly resulting in open warfare. Adams also prevented the preposterous Virginia and Kentucky resolutions, which proposed to grant nullification powers to the states if they disagreed with federal laws. In Adams' previous term, he also protected the people of the United States of America in his passing of the Alien Law, which prevented dangerous conspiring foreigners from infiltrating precious American soil. His Sedition Act endeavored to protect Americans from treason and factionalism by prosecuting those who engaged in such activities. Strangely, it is often argued that President Adams did not have the Americans' best interests at hand when he was proposing these acts. These vague and sadly well-publicized accusations, however, were derived merely as petty defenses from the offenders of tranquility themselves, Republicans. If re-elected, President John Adams will continue his legacy creating a prosperous America by contributing his Federalist ideas to the United States government, a structure that promises a bright future. If Thomas Jefferson is elected, however, Americans cannot expect the same outcome. Jefferson proposes a state government with power that outweighs national authority, a laudable theory if one considers of our nation's history with state power. If his ways were to be put into place, our nation would consist of corrupt, individualistic governments, like that similar to Georgia during the Yazoo scandal, or worse yet, crumble like it did under the Articles of Confederation. Powerful state governments also grant too much power in the hands of the people.
I'm a poor farmer, and I'm voting for President John Adams in the election of 1800. Thomas Jefferson misrepresents himself as a poor yeoman like myself, but in actuality only spends minimal time on his own farm. Jefferson is no farmer, but instead a planter. How could such a man who clearly bears no realistic resemblance to me claim to be able to adequately serve my interests? The truth is, he can't.
I am an upper-class merchant, and I am voting for President John Adams. We share the same ideology that accumulated wealth is necessary for the growth of our budding nation. For the future of America to develop into a more urban country, Adams relies on merchants and businessmen like myself. If Adams is once again elected as president, I know that my occupation will contribute to a greater America.
I'm John Adams, and I approve this message.